Good evening, everybody. Unfortunately for the fans out there, you're going to have to hear my voice a little more tonight than you usually do. I know I can get long-winded sometimes, but Stove's feeling a little under the weather, a little stuffy tonight, so I'm going to give his voice a little bit of a break. But I do want to introduce him. Stove, how you doing, man?
Doing good, bud. Doing good. Can't complain other than the stuffiness, but I'm here and excited to talk college football because it's been a
Hell
couple
yeah.
weeks. So you and I were just talking a little bit about it, and you know, we had the Senior Bowl. We had a few other things come to light since the last time we were on, and so you know, every passing day is a day getting closer to the 2022 college football season. So
Yes,
been
sir.
excited for it.
Yes, sir. And yeah, like you said, the Senior Bowl went down, and we're getting close to combine time, so we're going to start hearing the hype. All those guys that have declared, and we're going to start to prepare for the underwear Olympics as it is. So let's talk a little bit about the Senior Bowl though, because it didn't get a lot of fanfare. It got so little fanfare that we actually didn't talk about it on our last episode.
Yeah.
This being the second episode of the off season, we didn't have a chance to catch it last week, so let's talk about it this week. We had the Senior Bowl goes down, and we get less and less hype about the Senior Bowl because underclassmen keep kind of dominating the draft and whatnot. But what are your thoughts about the Senior Bowl, and what can they do maybe to bring it back to what it used to be? Because it used to be a big deal.
Yeah, and we talked last episode about what college football in general, or what the mainstream media, being ESPN, can do to help promote college football in the so-called off season. And we talked about the early signing period, how that's just taken away from National Signing Day. There's not any hoopla for National Signing Day anymore because everyone does the early signing period in December. And now you have the Senior Bowl where, you know, we actually it didn't even come across our radar until after our show. And then we were just like, shit, like we didn't even talk about the Senior Bowl. And so it really, I think it needs to come down to, college football in general, and the powers that be that, I don't know if it's, the colleges where, and the ADs or the athletic departments that some of these players are from that are playing in the Senior Bowl, that they, need to do a little bit better promoting. But I think whoever is airing the Senior Bowl, they need to do a better job of highlighting the players, highlighting the game. It's, in a way, it's almost like a second chance, uh, second chance for some of these guys to get their names out there, to show what they can do. You have, we were just talking about Malik Willis out of Liberty. It's a chance for a guy like that who's coming over from Liberty to play against some of these guys, at some Power 5 schools that may not be, a first, second round pick or so, highly sought after, but still went to some of those, excuse me, Power 5 schools, to where, you're seeing how well they stack up against some of those guys. And they definitely need to do something better. Because if I didn't remember it, I would have loved to watch it. I think it was going on as we were podcasting. So it would have been nice to have it in our background and we could talk about it as well.
Yeah,
So
I caught the end of it when we got off the show, and
yeah,
then I caught a replay of it because I was interested to kind of see some of the guys play. And you made the perfect point, right? This is a time for guys that played at smaller schools to play some of that competition, play up a bit, and show off that, like, yeah, I may have played at Liberty, I may have played at one of these smaller schools, but I'm a guy that can play in this league, right? I can play at the next level. I can compete with these guys that play at these bigger schools, because it's such a foregone conclusion when we talk about guys that play at Alabama, guys that play at, Ohio State, USC, all these big time programs that just continue to churn out NFL talent. and for these little schools, this is a time for them to be able to shine. And what's frustrating too is we used to have a few of these games. We didn't have just the Senior Bowl. We had the East-West game, the North-South game. We had a number of games in the off season that really used to get highlighted. And now it's like, yeah, these guys get a chance to go play, but there's really no hype, no nothing about it. And the eyes are there, right? The NFL eyes are there, but it's not the national eyes.
Yeah.
Right. And the people that matter are the ones that are going to be drafting them, but we don't get that national scope on these guys. And a guy like a Malik Willis and then Kenny Pickett, right? There's some conversation coming out of the Senior Bowl in the other direction for Kenny Pickett because they had a couple of practices in the weather and he struggled to throw the ball. And then the questions about hand size.
Not hand size, exactly.
And these are the things that, like, we're going to get close to draft day, and all we're going to know as, the kind of casual fan is like, what's Mel Kiper say about the guy? What's Todd McShay say about the guy? Because the Senior Bowl isn't highlighted like it used to. We used to get practices were aired on ESPN and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just not what it used to be. And I understand that the underclassmen are dominating a lot of the draft hype and whatnot. And the Senior Bowl is for seniors, obviously. But I'd like to see it highlighted more because a guy like Malik Willis, who went and showed out, and really impressed at the Senior Bowl, is a guy that on the Nationals radar, people probably still don't know who he is, right? Like we do because we've talked about him. We do because we're junkies about college football, but not everybody knows who Malik Willis is. Not everybody knows that Liberty even has a football program. Probably,
yeah, exactly.
Right? So there's that to consider. And it really is an opportunity for these guys to showcase some of the things that they can do against some better talent. It's not the cream of the crop that's coming out in the draft, but it is, like you said, some of these guys that competed at that level at those schools. Now you can show that you can compete against those guys that they may be mid to high mid or even low mid round draft picks, but you've got an opportunity to really showcase that, hey, this guy played at Bama, this guy played at Florida State, but I can play against this guy.
Yeah, and you just mentioned that these guys may not be first rounder, they may be second, mid third or so, but you never know.
Right.
I mean, it's this opportunity that they're given. Okay. And we'll stay on the Malik Willis train here. Okay. He had a hell of a season with Liberty. Now you put him in an extra game against maybe some Power 5 players. He showed out. He's practicing against those Power 5 players. He showed out. Then, so you show out in practice, you show out during the game, his draft stock starts rising. Then all of a sudden, and this is, I still don't get this. I think it's on the field rather than the combine. But then you have the combine coming up. And it's, okay, how many reps of 225 or whatever? How, what's his 40 time? How's he throwing? And they're throwing without shoulder pads. They're throwing, with no one coming at him or anything else like that. Oh, he did awesome. He had a great 40 time. Oh, he, did this many reps on the bench press. Oh, draft stock rises even more. So now you have a guy that may have been a second round, maybe even a third round pick, to where now he's in talks of potential first round pick because of the opportunities that have been given to him. But yet there hasn't been any fanfare about, there hasn't been any TV publicity or anything else like that. And it's a shame because college football has so much money. I mean, if you saw the report that came out last week, just for the SEC alone, now I know it's, apples to oranges here. Okay. It's the SEC, but still the numbers that each school in the SEC received for their share of the revenue, what was it, like 76 million?
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. 76 million for one school just for a college football season. Yeah, like, come on. So don't tell me that, there's not any money.
Should be able to advocate for their players much better than they do.
Exactly.
The only time they ever do is when it's Heisman season, right? Like you see
Yeah.
billboards for, so and so who might go to New York, and then that's putting the brand on a billboard, right? So they're always just seizing opportunities for the school to get more and more hype. It ain't about the players, even during Heisman season, because then they could say we've got Heisman winner, Tony Dorsett went to our school, right? So
Yeah.
it is what it is. But here's a question for you. It just kind of popped in my head as you were talking about like what we can do better. How do you think NIL deals might be able to increase some of the hype for the Senior Bowl?
I think on this it would be, you know, it would be a person by or player by player basis, obviously. But and it all depends on where if it stays the same every year, to where that stadium or people around them, around that area, as far as businesses go or anything else, it may not be your year long NIL deal. It may just be a quick week or two to where, oh, hey, here's an extra 15, 20 grand or something, whatever those numbers are. But in your downtime, come to my car dealership,
Yeah.
sign some autographs or something, something like that. But yeah, I think that could be a great opportunity for some of these businesses to get their names out there. To if they're not in the college atmosphere right now, this is a great foot in the door.
Nice. Yeah, I think so too, for sure. So I want to pivot a little bit. We're going to stay in the upcoming draft vein, but I want to talk a little bit about this quarterback class because we've talked about it all season. It's kind of a weak quarterback class. There's we've had Kenny Pickett up there as kind of the guy that's the most ready to play at the NFL level. There's some question marks coming out of the Senior Bowl about hand size and all that, but he played at Pitt. He played in shitty weather at Pitt and did fine. Put up big numbers, played in big games, right? And did fine there. Glove technology today is so silly too, right? Like he could just get a glove that fits snug, and they say it feels just like it's your hand nowadays anyway. So like, I'm not too worried about the hand size thing, but it is a thing in the NFL and whatnot. But how do you think this quarterback class is going to fare? Because I think we're at a point where we may see one or two guys go in the first round, but we're not going to see the run on quarterbacks that we've seen. And we also have two teams that are picking late in the draft that are newly minted quarterback needy teams. Now, Pittsburgh, we expected, right? But there was still the question of whether Ben was going to retire. He's made it official. Tampa Bay now is a quarterback needy team when we really didn't expect it, right? I think a lot of people anticipated Brady playing beyond his 44-year-old season into at least next year, maybe even a couple more years, because the dude was playing at an MVP level this year,
Yeah.
right? Like he hasn't taken a dip in production. So Tampa's newly in the mix for a quarterback. Now, if they go and get veterans, if they go trade for veterans, how much of an impact does that have on this quarterback class? Because I think maybe we don't, but I think we both anticipate they would be in the market for quarterbacks in the first round if they weren't able to get vets. Maybe not Tampa as much as Pittsburgh, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts in terms of what sort of impact that could have on the quarterback class.
No, and we kind of talked about this year's quarterback class all throughout the season too, and how it was, a diluted quarterback class from years past. And it's funny you brought up Tampa Bay, because I was listening to a show this morning, and they were talking about Kirk Cousins possibly being in the mix for a possible trade down to Tampa, and possibly Russell Wilson as well too. With all that being said, two-part answer here. I truly think that we'll only have two quarterbacks go in the first round. And I don't, with that, I don't think, even if Tampa Bay Pittsburgh, I really think that if they don't if they don't trade before the draft, I really don't think that they will go and get a quarterback. I think they'll still be on the market for a quarterback via trade after, or they're going to be one of those guys, one of those teams that draft a quarterback, maybe mid-round guy. But truthfully, I think if they don't get a trade done before the draft, I really don't see them wasting a first-round pick on Pickett or Malik Willis. And it's not to knock those guys, because I think those two guys are going to be first-round picks.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. At that quarterback position is, dime a dozen. We've seen that. We've seen, you look at Tom Brady, the 6th or 7th round pick, and has won all these Super Bowls. You finally have Matt Stafford, a number 1 overall pick, finally in his 13th season, win a Super Bowl, finally gets to a Super Bowl and the playoffs. So the first round quarterbacks, they're not all what they're made out to be either. Some of those hidden gems are 2nd, 3rd, maybe even 4th round picks.
Yeah, you mentioned Cousins. Russell Wilson was a 3rd round pick.
Russell Wilson was another one. Dak Prescott was another one.
Was a 4th round pick. And yeah, for sure. There's guys to be had if you've got the right structure and infrastructure around them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of these first round guys go wrong, right? We were I'm going to stay on the Malik Willis train a little bit. We were talking about the potential that Washington may be in the market to draft him. And my immediate thought is like, I feel for the guy if he goes to Washington, because I watched Ron Rivera with Cam Newton never even attempt to develop that guy into a serviceable passing quarterback, right? He was a guy that he could hit the big play to Steve Smith, and his safety blanket was Greg Olsen. But other than that, he completed like 58% of his passes for his career. It's like, that's abysmal. And that's coaching. I watched the guy's mechanics never change.
Yeah.
And they did the same thing with Haskins. I bitched about it and bitched about it and bitched about it. Fix his feet. When his feet are right, he completes passes. But they don't want to work with a quarterback. They want a guy that can come in and they can just call plays, and Scott Turner sucks and whatnot. So, like, infrastructure and where a guy goes, whether it's a first-round guy or a 6th-round guy, is much more important, unfortunately, for that guy. It's much more important where he goes as opposed to who he is and who and we saw Stafford, right? Like, the guy was uber numbers, production, toughest guy on the fucking planet. Dude played through injuries for a real shitty team. Finished out 2020, I believe, with a separated shoulder, and didn't want to get off the field because he wanted to finish the season with his guys. But he's in a place that Detroit is a bad franchise, right? And I know a little bit about bad franchises. So that infrastructure that's in place is much more important. And I think with a team like Tampa, with a team like Pittsburgh, I think you're right? I think they'd be in the market if the right guy was there. If they fell in love with a guy at the combine or pro day or, during the interview process and the workout process, if they fell in love with a guy, maybe they would go spend a 1st-round pick on him. But it'd have to be a guy they think they can win with right away, because those two teams are two rosters that they have to feel like they're ready-made to win. Both playoff teams this past season. Tampa's coming off a fucking Super Bowl championship, followed by, if they hadn't been decimated by injuries, they may have gone back-to-back, and obviously the Antonio Brown shenanigans. But
yeah.
So I think it does have a huge impact on the quarterback class. And I'm with you. I think 2 quarterbacks is the number. I think it's Pickett. I think it's Willis, because I think Willis right now has so much hype coming out of the Senior Bowl that unless he goes to the combine and like runs a 5.1 40, like, he's probably going to be a 1st-round pick.
Yeah, and you made mention of the coaching structure and all that. That plays a huge role in things as well. And you're absolutely right. If you look at what has happened up in Buffalo with Josh Allen,
100%.
That dude came out of Wyoming. Like, I remember him playing against Nebraska and had like 4 or 5 interceptions in one game against Nebraska. And he came into the league, he struggled, but kept on improving, feet work, arm work, arm angles, everything else, and the coaching structure. The coaching structure was huge up there as well as him and his ability to make changes as well. And look where they are now. Look what Buffalo has in Josh Allen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look what they fixed for him, man. Like they fucking fixed his platform, right? That was the biggest thing for him. Fix your platform, fix your feet. Your feet and your base, your hips are so important for a quarterback. And I know, like, I'm not a quarterback coach in the NFL, but I played quarterback in high school and had a really good coach, right? He played some semi-pro ball and had a tryout with the Bills. But your feet are so fucking important. I watch guys on Sunday. The guys that can throw off platform are the ones that have a solid foundation underneath them. Guys like Rodgers, right, are the anomaly. Okay, a guy that can have his feet in quicksand and throw the ball 80 yards through a fucking donut hole, right? Like those guys are anomalies. You just don't get them. Look at Mahomes. Mahomes has a solid foundation under him. Kansas City fixed him because he wasn't that guy in college. He came out of college and wasn't a very accurate quarterback, right? They fixed him. They worked with him. You're willing to do that. Josh Allen is the number one example because that dude could throw a strawberry through a battleship if he could hit the battleship, right? And now look at him. The guy is one of the more accurate guys in the league. He makes plays everywhere, out of the pocket, in the pocket, running the ball because he's a fucking monster. That's the kind of guy you want to develop. And I think that is so important for people to invest and be all in. And that's what the Bills did with him. They built around him. And that's what the Patriots did with Tom Brady for years. They put a lot of really good talent on the defensive side of the ball and relied on him on the offensive side of the ball. They won a lot of games 2017, 24-21 because Tom, found a way to win late. But it's that infrastructure that's in place that is so very, very important.
Absolutely.
So last little bit here, in the off season, want to talk real quick about Jim Harbaugh. Just mentioned today. I know he's your favorite guy.
Yep.
But we talked about this, right? At the end of the season, we talked a lot about the fact that he took a pay cut to keep some of his coaching staff in place, but also because he knew like he needed to produce. And that was, I think a little bit of a job saver as well. But he delivered this year. And it's nice to see, even after all the shenanigans with the coaching carousel, we bitched a lot about that with him taking interviews in Miami and Minnesota, and he was in the mix, and the talk of him possibly going to Chicago and whatnot. It's good to see Michigan get him on the back end, right? And they announced it today. He gets another year, and they're going to rework the details of the deal he signed last year, which to me, the details haven't been released, but to me, that says he got a pay raise. We talked a lot about guys like, how much money Brian Kelly got and the offer to Jimbo Fisher and Michigan State just shilling out money like crazy, right? I think this is a guy that, despite him not being your favorite guy, I don't mind the guy. He's kind of a quirky guy, but
he's very quirky, yeah.
Despite him not being your favorite person, I think we can both agree that they did right by Harbaugh after this season.
We'll see. Because in my opinion, that this deal should have been done right after season.
True.
I mean,
that's a good point.
That they basically left that deal in play, and that allowed him to go take these NFL coaching interviews. Now, I know his even when his name was just a rumor when it first came out for the Las Vegas Raiders. Once you catch wind of that, and if you haven't already started to restructure that contract, and maybe they were in the process of it, and they couldn't come to agreement or anything, and they wanted, maybe there was an agreement between the two that he wanted to get his feet wet again in the NFL and just wanted to go on these coaching interviews. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But until I see the deal the true actual details of this deal, I don't think that Michigan did right by him, and it's hard for me to say that against for Harbaugh, but in all actuality, it's the facts. I mean, if they wanted to do right by him, that deal would have been signed, sealed, and delivered probably even before
the national championship,
before the playoffs. Yeah, before the playoffs. Like, get that locked down after you just beat Ohio State.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? I didn't really think about it that way, that they waited and waited, but I wonder, to kind of look at it from a different angle, I wonder if he told them before, maybe right after the end of the season or something along those lines, if he was talking to the administration and let them know, hey, I'm gonna test the waters. I got that itch, right? Maybe there's a position out there that I'm interested in the NFL, and maybe that's why, or maybe I'm just making excuses for Michigan. I certainly could be. Maybe that's something that they had with the conversation. I'm glad they did, though, right? When he said I'm coming back, and they worked out this deal, and he got that raise back, because he didn't have to take a pay cut.
No,
his contract's guaranteed, right? Like, they could have fired him and paid him the rest of his fucking money, but he agreed to take a pay cut to keep some of his assistants on. Plus, he wanted to make good on his word that he was going to win games at Michigan.
Well, and the other thing too that's interesting here is, was it his offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator? I can't remember. The guy that he just brought in this year is now with his brother at the Ravens.
Yep. I think it's the OC. Or no,
I think it is.
I think he's replacing Wink Martindale.
That's right. Yeah. So it's interesting that you have some of these assistant coaches leaving to take NFL jobs, and you're kind of just sitting there by the wayside, and this was going into National Signing Day too.
Yeah.
That they still didn't have this logged, and that was I know, that's where the early signing period helped them, I believe, but it still could hinder them.
Yeah.
Why you just didn't get that locked up, and like we both just said, there could have been an agreement between the two about just testing the waters, seeing what other teams' interests are, and stuff like that. But at the same time, you're kind of putting your alma mater. This is your alma mater here,
potentially in a pinch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to believe that those talks went on about allowing him to do that. Yeah. But you never know.
Yeah, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, and it could have been just what it, like we talked about it, what it could have been. We suspected it was potentially that he was looking for leverage to get a new deal, right? Hey, I'm going to go talk to NFL teams because I want my money back, right? Yeah. Like, I took a pay cut. I got us to the playoff. I beat Ohio State. I won the Big Ten. Give me my money back, right?
Yeah.
Or I'll just go coach in the NFL. Or he could have legitimately had the itch and wanted to test the waters. Or it could have been a little bit of both, right? It certainly could have been with the best intentions of, I have that itch, but also like, maybe I can get them to give me my money back too. And the National Signing Day thing was really weird. And I know it obviously is kind of at the mercy of the schedule of the NFL if you're going to test those waters. But again, as we've bitched about, like, early signing period, now that National Signing Day doesn't have the hype that it had. Maybe the early signing period did kind of bail Michigan out in this sense, and we could have seen a lot of flip flop after, because if the coach changed, they're allowed to and whatnot. But it is interesting the way it kind of played out with Michigan for sure.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, and I know you really don't have a college football team, but pick a team, and I'll ask the question, and then we'll go to a sponsor break real quick. But here's my question to you. Pick a team that you are most interested in seeing how they develop. So take Alabama. Okay. They have the quarterback pretty much situated. Whether it's O-line, wide receivers, since they're losing some wide receivers, what aspect of that team that you pick are you most intrigued about? So think on that. Think on that, and we'll take a quick 30-second break. Brought to you by PocketPairClub.com. Pocket Pair Club, club number 26881. PocketPairClub.com for all your gambling needs. All right, Gary. So the question was presented to you. Pick a team that you are most excited to see what aspect develop.
This is tough, right? Because just off the top of my head, I have like 4 or 5 objects of intrigue, right? And I don't want to spoil any in case it's yours, but after I go, then you go. I'm going to mention a few more of the ones that I kind of waffled on, right? Like thought about, but I don't want to go to the well too much, but I am very, very interested to see how Cincinnati reloads. They're losing Desmond Ridder, who was a big part of that team. We saw them win games with their defense down the stretch. They're losing some of those guys on the defensive side of the ball. They had a great running game. I believe Isaiah Ford is up and out at Cincinnati. So I want to see how they reload on the offensive side of the ball, because I do think that Fickle's going to be able to reload and put that defense together just fine. I think they'll be fine.
He just got a contract extension too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like yesterday, maybe, or 2 days ago.
Yeah, so one, that's a great win for Cincy to keep him around, or at least make the buyout prohibitive enough that
and well deserved too.
For sure, absolutely. But I want to know who the next guy up for them is at quarterback, and where they're going to go with the offense in terms of being able to reload and compete, because that was the spot that we talked about after the Alabama game, that their defense was fine. Their defense, showed that they can compete with the bigger squads, but they really, really struggled on offense. So I want to see where they reload on offense. They've got to get better along the offensive line, but they really have to find the guy that's going to replace Ridder and be able to make that offense tick.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very good one right there. I mean, especially after him being in our Heisman stock watch throughout the season and everything else. Yeah, for sure. So for me, probably comes as no shock to you, being a Nebraska fan. I'm going to go to Nebraska. And I think a lot of people might think that I'm going to go one way, but I'm going to go a different way on this one. We had the big hire of Mark Whipple. We poached him from Pitt, who had just coached Kenny Pickett, and who threw out some amazing numbers. And now you have some decent quarterbacks in the quarterback room there at Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not where I'm going.
You're going to go the other way.
I'm going to stay on the offensive side of the ball.
Oh, I thought you might bitch about kickers.
No, we did offer someone, so I think he accepted. So
nice.
I'm going to go on the offensive line.
Okay.
Bringing in Raiola from the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
As an offensive line coach. Nebraska brought in a lot of weapons. They brought in quarterbacks. They brought in running backs. They brought in wide receivers. Now, they did bring in some linemen, whether it's a fifth-year person or some JUCO guys. I want to see how that offensive line develops under Raiola. And it's not the Dominic Raiola that went to Nebraska and was an All-American at Nebraska. It's his younger brother. But nonetheless, I think he is going to be one that is more heavily watched and really put on, I don't want to say a hot seat, but that seat that everyone is going to be looking at, because if you look at the offensive line at Nebraska this past year, there was no run game.
Yeah.
Martinez didn't have a lot of time in the pocket. He was always scrambling. And to be honest with you, they're just not big like a Minnesota, an Ohio State, a Michigan. Like when you look at those teams, you can see a sizable difference. So it will definitely be interesting to me for the offensive line side of things to see how Nebraska does with Raiola coming in from the Chicago Bears.
I love that take. I love that take because it reminds me of the fact that growing up, Nebraska was a team that would smash you in the face, run over you, trample you. They had the big old corn-fed offensive linemen that we see now for like Wisconsin, and you mentioned Michigan and some of the other schools that have those big road grading monsters up front. Iowa every single year.
How many offensive linemen does Iowa put in the NFL draft every single
year? I mean, you're talking stalwarts too.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking big time offensive linemen in the NFL. Cornerstone left tackles, some of the best guards in the league went to Iowa. And I love that take because I'd love to see Nebraska get back to that and being that. And I think that fixes a lot of the woes that we've seen from them, right? They can't run the ball well. Let's get some guys up front that are going to fucking dominate.
They have the playmakers. They just need the time and the holes to get those guys going.
Yeah. Can't get the ball down the field if your quarterback's laying on his ass.
Yeah.
That's the truth of it. So I love that take. So I had a couple others that I kind of tossed around in my brain real quick. I like you putting me on the spot because it makes me
sorry about
dance
that.
around. No, I like it. I like it because it makes me dance around and think about these things too. And like one of my first thoughts was the quarterback position at USC because USC is it's a darling school. It's a Hollywood school. And we always think about USC as like quarterback university, right? Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, Mark Sanchez, on down the line, right? And you go back and back with some of the big names that have played at USC, Heisman winners and national championships and all that. So USC hasn't had that in a long time. Darnold was supposed to be that awesome his freshman year or whatever year he was the starter his first year and then tapered off. And even in the NFL, he's flopped, right? Saw some promise at times, but yeah, dude sees ghosts and he's still seeing ghosts of like Oregon probably. So I want to see how the quarterback position develops there because Lincoln has coached some really, really good quarterbacks, put some good quarterbacks in the NFL, been, overseen some really high-powered offenses. So I want to see how that develops. They brought in some talent, obviously the transfers and all that fun stuff. And then the decommit from Oklahoma that committed to USC. So they've got the talent there. I need to see him put that together on the field. And I think Lincoln's going to be able to, do that because we've seen him do it.
So interesting take here. And just go with me here. We'll stay with the USC. We'll stay in the quarterback room. So this is where I'm going. Caleb Williams.
I hate that he went there.
Will not be the starting quarterback.
I'm with you 100%. That freshman that they just brought in is a fucking stud, bro. Like He's unreal. I think he's going to be a 3-year starter there as a true freshman, 3-year starter into the NFL. Like, that dude is real. And Caleb Williams, for all of his athleticism and his heroics last year at times for Oklahoma, I'm with you 100. I hate that he went there. I didn't understand it. Once I forget the guy's name, but he's a fucking like 7-star prospect at the quarterback position.
He's out of California too, I believe.
Yes, he was the gem of the recruiting class for Oklahoma, and then decommitted and went to USC, and he's the gem of the recruiting class for USC. I don't understand what Caleb's doing, right? I thought he had, Wisconsin was an option. I didn't know that he fit the offense very well. I know he talked to a few other schools. Clemson, I think, was in the mix for a minute. I hate that decision, and I don't think he starts. I think he's in the transfer portal again next year.
I agree with you.
I really do.
Yep.
They may even redshirt him and just say, yeah, you can have your eligibility back. Go ahead in the transfer. Like, I didn't understand that decision. I really didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, man. One of the other ones that I was looking at, too, is Brian Kelly going down to LSU. And I hate to stay on the offensive side of the ball, but Brian Kelly has been lauded as an offensive genius since his days at Cincinnati, right? Like, he was this offensive guru, went to Notre Dame and had some pretty good offenses, but they always had incredible defenses. Now he goes down to Baton Rouge, where they can recruit defense just in their own backyard. Like, the best DBs, the best safeties, they play high school football in Baton Rouge, right? So just walk up the road and pluck out 9 5-star safeties, right? So he doesn't have to do the work that you do at Notre Dame, right? Because obviously academic standards and all that fun stuff. So now I want to see Brian Kelly with the handcuffs off. Go get them boys out of Baton Rouge. Go get them boys out of Florida and start putting some fucking offensive talent on the field, because we've seen a ton outside of the quarterback position. And that's where I really think Brian Kelly's going to be able to focus his energy and bring in a guy that's going to be able to take LSU to the next level. Because with the exception of Joe Burrow, who played one season there as a starter and obviously had just a monumental historic season, they haven't had good quarterback play in the Bayou in quite some time, right? Yeah. And we think back to maybe, I hate to bring his name up because he was such a bad flop in the NFL, but Jamarcus Russell was right. Like, the last guy I can think of that I looked at him and said, that's a talented quarterback at the college level. He was. And he was a monster. And then he ate his way out of the league and never studied film. I don't want to get too sidetracked. I still can't get over the story of
him sitting on his ass.
They sent him home with blank tapes and said, go study the game film. This is our game plan for the week. We want you to study this.
I've never heard this story.
Oh my God. All right. Excellent. I'm glad I'm not getting
never heard this story.
New story. So the Raiders sent him home with game tape, blank tapes, and said, go home and study this.
Was Chucky the coach at the time?
I don't think so. I think it was Bill Callahan.
Or was it
not Callahan.
Was it Kiffin?
It might have been the guy down in New Orleans right now, the defensive coordinator. Dennis Allen. I think it was Dennis Allen.
Okay.
I can't remember who the head coach was, but they sent him home with blank tapes and said, this is the game plan for the week. Study the film, blah, blah, blah. They come back the next day and said, hey, what'd you think of it? And he's like, oh, yeah, I love it. I'm ready to go. Let's do it. And they're like, Jamarcus, fucking tapes were blank, bro. Could you imagine having to answer to your coach after, quote unquote, studying the game plan and the tapes were fucking blank? And that's when they knew. They said, like, that's when we knew we fucked up.
Dude, that's crazy. That's crazy. I've never heard that story. I'm so glad that you told me that.
I love that. I can never get over it.
So it's almost Lane Kiffin.
It Lane at the time? Okay.
It was.
Good call. Yeah. Good call. They bounced around from coach to coach.
Yeah, they did.
Right year, and I couldn't remember who was all there, but yeah, man.
So
set up with Blake fucking tape.
So that, and it's not even a true story. I mean, it probably is somewhere down the road, but if you ever seen the movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner,
I haven't seen that one.
Okay, so
I haven't seen that one yet, but yeah, that one is on my list. That's the one. He's the Browns GM, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they have the number 7 pick, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, they trade up to the number 1 pick, and now they're in they basically have Bo Callahan, the quarterback from Wisconsin. Okay, and there's a part here in the movie where they're trying to do some research on the guy. Okay, but everywhere that they go, everyone says the same thing. Like, this is like the next quarterback of the century, and they're still trying to find something. And well, one of his guys that, dives up some unheard of information, basically tells him a story. And it's the strangest story that the NFL GMs or whoever had heard. And it was, they gave each of their quarterbacks a playbook. Want you to read through it. Let us know what you think. Well, in the back of the playbook, they put like a $20 bill to see if,
If they would find it.
If they would find it, blah, blah, blah. Well, Bo Callahan, comes back and basically says, yeah, read the playbook and blah, blah. And they're like, nothing was said about the 20. And so then they're like, well, what'd you think about the $20 bill? You're like, oh yeah. Good one, guys. Good one. And, so he was just like, he had the nerve to lie about it, but then lie on top of it. Yeah, and they said that's
down.
Yeah. And they said that's the second strangest response that they'd ever heard. And he's like, do you want to know what the first response was? And he's like, Kevin Costner's just like, just fucking tell me, He's like, some quarterback read through it, sent the $20 bill back to him, and said, keep this for when I win the Super Bowl.
Yes, that's that BDE.
That's right,
it, man.
Yeah.
I love it. If that was a true story, that
I know, right?
The Trash Talk Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Keep the 20 for when I win the Super Bowl. Oh man, that's crazy.
But speaking of Jamarcus Russell, I mean, you heard. I know you've probably heard this story before too. They say that he was sitting down, literally just sitting down on the ground, and threw the ball like 60, 70 yards in the air.
Yep. Speaking of that, the weirdest shit I ever saw, the maybe wildest, not weirdest, Melvin Ingram, the fucking defensive end, the linebacker, he was at an event. It might have been like a Super Bowl like interview, and somebody let leak that he had a fucking cannon for an arm. And they're like, dude, he can throw it 100 yards from his knees and shit. And he's like, and they're like, no way, right? And he's like, I can throw it pretty far, right? He's in jeans, like skinny jeans, and like a polo, and it's where they have the kicking, like the fans kicking. I'm pretty sure it was the Super Bowl. They have the fans kicking and set up and shit, and they've got the nets like 45, 50 yards down the pathway, and he literally gets down on one fucking knee and throws the ball like 40 yards into this fucking net without warming up, just cold, just boom, right in the net. Like, dude, talk about just being a fucking athlete, man.
No kidding.
Yeah, man. I'll have to find the video. I'll send it to you because I'm sure it exists out there somewhere. But yeah, man, I remember seeing him fucking. They're like, yeah, this dude could throw it 100 yards from his knees and shit. And like, that sounds like some urban legend shit. And then the dude delivered with like a 40-yard missile into the net, and it was on a rope too. Like, He didn't just get lucky and get it to the net. Like, it was on a rope. Like, it could have gone another 20, 25 yards. Like,
solid.
Got a hose, dude. You want to hit Tropnik up on an ad here, and then we'll close out the show?
Yeah. Next 30-second break is brought to you by Excel Constructors out of Overland Park, Kansas. excelconstructors.com. 30-second sponsor break was brought to you by XL Constructors out of Overland Park, Kansas. XLConstructors.com.
All right, excellent. Thanks for that. Thanks, Trotnik, and of course, Pocket Pair Club for our sponsorships. Let's get to closing remarks here because we do have, for anybody that wants to hop over and jump on, we've got the Backyard Blitz coming up here in about 8 minutes. So, Stove, you got any closing remarks?
Other than college football needs to do a better job of advertising some of the postseason play and news, whether it be the Senior Bowl, whether it be National Signing Day. We need to get those back because those are key moments and key pieces that make college football. Yeah. So college football in general needs to do a better job at least those two things in the future.
Sure. Agreed. I'm going to piggyback a little bit too and emphasize that because the NFL has free agency, they have the draft, they have the combine, they have all these off-season activities and then camps, right? They have the mini camp and then OTAs and rookie camp and all that, right? So the NFL dominates the calendar year, and we understand that. We're not going to be able to change that, and college sports is not going to be able to compete with the NFL in the offseason because they don't have a free agency period. They don't have a draft. They, their signing day is essentially their draft day in that signing period. So put a little more thought, a little more effort into these postseason activities that you do have to capture those moments for these kids that have made you so much fucking money. You can put a little bit in, like Stove, you brought up the numbers for the SEC, but institutions across America are they're just printing money on the backs of college football and college sports in general. Like, you can do better. You can do better. So let's do better promoting the Senior Bowl, especially guys that have been there for 4 or 5 years, right? Let's do a better job. Give these guys their due as they transition out of your university into whatever their next endeavor is, whether that be the NFL or if the Senior Bowl really is like their last opportunity to play any football, right? So let's do a better job for sure. I'm with you 100%.
Yep.
All right. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of this episode, off-season episode number 2. We will see you guys in a couple of weeks. If there's any change to that schedule, we will be sure to post it to the page. But for the Big Stove, I'm Gary. This has been episode 2 of the off-season with Tailgate Trash Talk. We are out.